The recording, yes.
All
Okay,
right.
the session is now recording. Good morning again, colleagues, and welcome to the Research Capacity Development Unit at the University of Johannesburg Postgraduate School. My name is Lawrence, and I am delighted to be your moderator for today's workshops. Before I start, I would like to thank of all the attendees for taking the time to join, and most importantly, I would like to thank our presenter, our facilitator, Dr. Gabriel Monera, for his effort to preparing this presentation and for honoring our invite. Before introducing Dr. Gabriel to you, fellow attendees, fellow participants, I would like to go over a few housekeeping rules, of which I would like to think most of you are aware of. If you do have any questions during the session, please raise your virtual hand. And if you do not wish to speak, please type your question in the chat box and I will indicate to the presenter to address the question. And as I've indicated in the beginning that this session is being recorded and the presentation slide will be requested from our facilitator and we will post this on our model communities for your access. And please note that I'll also be sharing a feedback survey in the chat session. This feedback survey, we use it for our reporting purposes. And also, please, by filling in this feedback survey, this ensures that you receive a certificate of attendance. And also, please note that we use this for reporting, as I've mentioned, and also please to also provide some kind words to our facilitator. Okay, before I begin, please allow me to read over Dr. Gabriel Monera's bio. Dr. Gabriel Monera holds a PhD in Economic and Management Sciences with International Trade from the Northwest University and is currently enrolled in the Postgraduate Diploma in Research Supervision at the University of Johannesburg. With over a decade of teaching experience and a strong publication record, he has authored and co-authored book chapters and a number of articles in top-tier accredited peer-reviewed journals. He actively reviews for reputable journals and he has received multiple awards for academic excellence. Dr. Monera completed his postdoctoral research fellow at the University of Johannesburg and he currently serves as a research capacity development specialist at the University of Johannesburg Postgraduate School, supporting postgraduate students and researchers in academic writing and publication. His research interest includes trade policy, exportation promotion, globalization, foreign direct investment, regional integration in Africa, market accessibility measurement, and 4IR trade-related research. So without any further ado, please allow me to hand over to Dr. Gabriel. Thank you, and you may proceed, though. Thank you.
Lawrence, thank you so much for the great introduction. I just want, by show of virtual thumb, from both yourself and the participants, just an expression that you can hear me well and that you can also see these slides that I'm going to share with you. I'm sharing a screen with you. If you can see, just indicate by virtual thumb.
Slides, yes, I can see your slides. They're in presentation mode, and
Okay.
you may proceed, though. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. So, colleagues and the participants, I have already been introduced. The focus of today is on the College of Business and Economics proposal writing and submission procedures. So I just termed it, let me just go. Okay, so I just termed it writing a proposal tips and guidelines. So remember, proposals, we have different, quite a number of departments within the College of Business and Economics, and each department, mostly they do have their own sort of templates that they provide to students or to those who aspire to engage in postgraduate research, right? If you are writing a proposal, usually you get a template, with certain, sections that are mandatory within that particular department or within that particular faculty that you have to complete. Okay, so what I'm going to present to you today is sort of a generic, guidelines or tips that you can employ when you are crafting or when you are writing your proposal for, research purposes within the College of Business and Economics, irrespective of the department that you will fall in. But let me just remind you that the departments do have their own specific templates that they use, and in some cases, certain procedures that are not generic, which makes it important for you to adhere to the departmental guidelines as well as to the faculty guidelines. So this is what we are going to look at, during the course of this presentation. Understanding what a proposal is, then the reading process. Remember, when you are writing, this is not something that you just think of. I usually say writing is a process. It's not an event. So it's not something that just happens now, then it's completed. No, it is a process that is gradual in nature, that unfolds over a specified period of time, of which, when you're doing honors, usually 1 year. When you are doing masters in 2 years, maybe you should have completed. And for those who are doing PhD, 3 to 5 years, that kind of timelines, depending on the which actually differ from one university to another. Then also the structure of proposal, when you are writing a proposal, the structure that you follow, what happens after you have written the proposal, the submission procedures, which are sort of a generic nature. Then it's a bit of some conclusions and recommendations before we open the floor for questions and contributions. I sometimes usually term it open discussion. So, but in the course of the presentation, if you have any question that you think that you need to ask me, you are free to bring it to the attention of the moderator, Mr. Lawrence Asani, who will follow the correct procedures that we follow. Then we answer the question. So in other words, if you have any question during the course of the presentation, do not hesitate to engage me. Okay, so what is it that we call a proposal? Why do we even write a proposal? So we all know, okay, the term to propose, proposing by nature, I think we have, I always make a joke that, we even in our life, just as people, as individuals, we find ourselves, proposing in one way or in one form or the other. But when you propose, it simply means that you are trying to engage. It might be someone, to express an idea that the other person has to evaluate whether does it work or it doesn't work, right? So in terms of when we put this now in academic context, before you start writing your dissertation or your thesis, you are asked to write a proposal for it, right? So when you are proposing, you simply providing a snapshot of what your research involves. What is it that you want to do? Why is it important? Why should you do that? Remember, research have both monetary, time aspects, and other facets that are associated with it. But why should we even, take time to read what you would have researched? Why should we take time to, try to review that which you want to write? So you are proposing. So when you propose, this is where those who are experts in the field, usually the faculty committee or the department, committee that in terms of the higher degree processes, are the ones that review your proposal. The intention is whether to see whether what you want to do, does it work or it doesn't work, right? You are proposing, I want to do this. Then someone has to evaluate whether it works or doesn't work. But usually the the whole exercise is intended to give you feedback on the viability of the topic, how to focus the scope, research methods, and other issues that you should consider before progressing in your research. So in most cases, if it doesn't work, of course, the proposal can be rejected. Remember, like any proposal, it's either the person agree or might not agree, right? So it can be rejected, but I've never really witnessed a case where a proposal has been outrightly rejected. But in most cases, feedback is provided so that you can be able to sort of revise, the trajectory that you are taking. You can revise the questions that you are asking, the scope of the research design, and other aspects. Sometimes you can even be asked to change the topic completely, right? If it really doesn't work. So I haven't really witnessed a rejection, but I've seen sort of revisions being made, or sometimes when the worst case scenario being a topic being changed. So the research proposal should present the research topic, justify your reasons for choosing it, and outline how you are going to research that particular problem, or achieve the objectives that you aim to achieve, or answer the questions that you are posing, right? So, like I said, writing, it is a process and it's not an event. So before you write a proposal, you have to go into the process of reading. You have to read a lot of reading that you have to do, because remember, when you do research, we want to solve a problem that is existing within the society, that we feel that this problem needs to be addressed through research, right? So in other words, there should be a gap that you are feeling. That's where you are sort of joining the conversation in terms of literature that already exists, on that topic that you also want to investigate. So in other words, you don't have to replicate something that has already been done, or research a problem that has already been, where solutions have already been found. So in other words, you have to enter into a process of reading so that you can identify the gap in literature, which is central to research. So instead of reading every page, you must focus on what you really need to know. You have to read the information that is relevant. So instead of going on the internet, downloading everything that you see, going and printing everything to be in sort of hard copies, then go through each hard copy, marking and crossing out whether this is relevant. It's not, so it's not, it shouldn't be sort of a process that is like that. So you have to read with the eye or the focus of looking for what you really need to know, or looking for relevant information. So instead of reading every page in every book, you look for clues in chapter titles and introductions to narrow your focus. You use abstracts and conclusions from journal articles to check relevance. Keep notes of your reading along with clear records of bibliographic information and page numbers for your references. So when you are writing, sometimes it becomes very difficult. After you finish writing, then you find that there are certain references that you have referenced and you don't have them, at the end. So which means you now have to go on the internet, start searching again to look for that particular source, which can be a tedious process in some cases. So you don't have to whenever you cite, take note of the full reference entry, so that when you are now in the process of writing, you have the references at hand. Then your objective ultimately should be to create a dialogue between the theories and ideas you have read and your own thoughts. So you must add value. In other words, it's not just about taking what other people have done, then you put it down, or collecting information in other words, but you have to add your own input into that, your own thoughts. Apply your mind onto that which you are reading, or onto what the existing literature is echoing or is saying, right? Then you have to ask yourself these following questions. What is your personal perspective on the topic? What evidence is there that supports your point of view? Academic writing is formal. It must be supported by evidence. Evidence in form of the citations that we make, that's evidence. It's showing that someone else is supporting the idea that I have. Also, in terms of figures, that in statistical, some statistics and so on. That is being drawn from sources that are reputable, like maybe State SA, for example, government entities. For instance, from academic institutions and so on. Because academic writing is formal, we have to provide evidence, right? You also have to check whether each text is current or it is outdated. What argument is the author making? Is the author biased? Remember, sometimes we can subscribe to certain ideologies or philosophies, which can also, sort of inspire the orientation that we take when we engage in particular research. Maybe socialism versus capitalism. Those who are pro-capitalism can say globalization works. Those who are, maybe anti-capitalism or pro-socialism, they can say maybe globalization doesn't work. So there's a lot of, sort of dialogue or debate that can go on around that, even in terms of publication. When you want to publish, sometimes maybe you can send your text to journals have their own scope and they also have their own orientation. So the message that they are giving, is it really suitable for the journal that you want maybe possibly to publish to, or the audience that you want to listen to the work that you are doing or to the research that you are doing? So approaching your reading in this way ensures that you engage with the literature critically. So you don't have to just, like I said, collect information or build a library. Your task is not to build a library, but your task is to apply your mind to existing literature, approaching it from a critical perspective. Then, okay, so these are now I think I've explained what a proposal is and why is it essential that in some cases, okay, let me not even say in some cases, but when you are engaging in postgraduate studies, it is a norm that you have to write a proposal to propose what you are doing. Then the feasibility of that is checked, the viability of that is checked, and if it works, then the proposal is accepted, and you can start with the writing process. That, of course, includes other issues like seeking ethical clearances and so on, right? So, but this is now we are entering into the structure now of the proposal. So usually there's a title page that you have to fill. Okay, there's a title page that you have to fill. This is, in most cases, the information that should be, or the element that should be contained within the title. So the title you have devised so far, you can put it there. Remember, it's a working title because you do not. It can change over time until here at UJ. I'm yet to confirm whether they register the title, but in some universities the title is registered. But once you have registered the title, then no, you cannot change it. After that, in some institutions, but maybe in some you can change it. So that avoids other people from researching on the same the sort of topic or using the same title as the one that you are using. So this is a working title which can change throughout the research writing process. These are the qualities of a good title. The title must link to the content of the proposal. Remember, I always talk of what is called search engine optimization. That when one goes on Google, for example, what makes it that your article or your research that you are writing or your piece of text that you have written appears in the first 1 to 2 pages that you see on Google. Remember, when you search on Google, search maybe a particular topic, it can return results that there are 2 million articles that have written something in line with what you are searching, right? 2 million articles, maybe, or more than that. But what makes it that your article is not the number 2 million? It's within maybe the first 10. Because remember, when we are searching for information, we don't have time to look for all the pages, on Google. Or I just maybe look at the first page and then maybe go on the second one. But rather, the third one, it's very rare that I go on the third, fourth, fifth, right? But the article that I might be really looking for might be somewhere there. But why is it there? It's because when the title was sort of framed, the author did not think of search engine optimization. So your title must have these sort of characteristics for it to be a good title, linked to the content of your proposal, of the topic that you are researching on. You have to use all relevant what topics. It's also recommended, these things that are fancy, maybe possibly during that time. Like now, we are in the digital era. We talk of, if your title is having something to do with artificial intelligence, the blockchain, that kind of. So, but you don't have to include artificial intelligence if your article is not about that, right? If your proposal, the topic that you are researching on is not about AI, then you just include AI in your. I've seen some articles where the topic, when I look at the title, then when I go on to read the abstract, I don't see anything relevant that is of relevance to what they are really saying in the title. Remember, I'm searching using keywords of what I want to look for, but those keywords then they are picked up or captured within the title. But when you go into the study itself in the abstract, then also go read the introduction, go in the read the conclusion, you don't really see anything in line with what is captured within the title or the keywords within the title. So you also have to the title, it can be funky, like size matter and analysis of tourism development, for example. Title could also be in a question format if you have decided to do that. What's the impact of this on that, that kind of. So it is your choice, but mostly the yardstick, they say you can, it should not be more than maybe, let's say, I normally use 14, about 14 words when I'm writing a title. It shouldn't be a paragraph of a title, or it's a sentence that is having 3-4 lines. It shouldn't be like that. So 14 words usually it works. It can also be a sort of descriptive, using action verbs, that kind of. So that it makes the title a good title. Then from the title, the title page also contains your information as well. Who is supervising you, or the potential supervisor, so among other facets, your information is the author information, including the supervisor, institution, and so on, the program that you are doing as well. What degree are you studying? If it's an honors degree in what, master's or PhD thesis. If you are proposing to write a thesis, but in what, right? All that information is contained on the title page. Then we move on to the introduction or background. Now you start with the writing phase of the proposal. So within the introduction or background, you are simply providing sort of context to the topic, and you present the key issues of the proposed research, right? So I need to know what is it that what has been going on, maybe particularly within the field. What is it that is shaping your orientation, towards why is this, topic? So it's something that you are presenting to to someone else, where you have to give some background, of that particular topic or the research question that you want to answer. So here you give a background to the study from usually a broad perspective to a narrow research question. So we call it funnel approach. The main message must be clear and concise. The readers should understand and be contextualized in the research and know which broad research field the study fits in. Right. So we are now talking of those philosophies and research designs, paradigms that you can follow. Is it a quantitative? Is it a qualitative research? Which school of thought are you subscribing to? What sort of theories are underpinning your research, and so on. The reader must have a clear idea of what is being studied. The relevance, importance, and purpose of the research must be very clear. If you are also doing PhD, for PhD studies, the contribution of the study, it has to be explicit. The reader should not search for ask maybe what is the contribution that the study is making to existing literature, right? So for PhD level, that is non-negotiable. You have to be, explicitly state what the contribution the study is making to the literature that is existing. Remember, at the end, you become a doctor of philosophy. We need to know what is it for you to earn that title. What is it that you have done that have contributed to the field? Okay, so from the background, you have gave the background, you have gave the context to the problem that you want to research on, or to the research question, starting from a broader to a narrow sort of a frame where you start broadly, then you end up with a narrowly defined research question. You move on to state the problem clearly. Remember, everything that you are writing is also within the context of the problem, but we still need to see the problem stated clearly, right? That if I want to know what is the problem, I must just go to that section and read. So this is usually just maybe one paragraph, two paragraphs if we have written a lot, right? Two paragraphs if written a lot. It shouldn't be a section that is long, like pages of stating a problem. Just have to state. It must just be very clear and sort of clear and concise. In two paragraphs at most. So this is simply a statement about an area of concern, a condition to be improved, a difficulty to be eliminated, or a troubling question that exists in scholarly literature, in theory or in practice, that points to the need for meaningful understanding and deliberate investigation. So there must be an existing problem for you to justify that you want to do research on a particular topic. If there's no problem, then why even wasting time researching on that? Why wasting other resources that can be monetary and in other forms, right? That you have to invest in the study. If there's no problem that you want to solve, so there should be a problem, right? The purpose of the problem statement is to introduce the reader to the importance of the topic being studied. So you have to demonstrate the importance of the topic. Otherwise, in other words, you must convince the person who is reading that there is a problem that exists within the society, that needs to be resolved through research, right? So it has to be convincing, even if you feel like there's no problem, but it must be something. You must convince the person who is reading that there is a problem. That's why I said it's a process of reading. You don't just think that this is a problem, then based on your thoughts, then you sort of just label it as a problem, just to be convincing to the reader or to the audience that you are writing for that this is a problem that really indeed exists, and it warrants research for it to be resolved. Right? It also places the problem into a particular context that defines the parameters of what is to be investigated. So within the problem, this is where we see the sort of a delineation of the parameters that you are going to investigate, or the variables that you are going to investigate. So it provides the framework for reporting the results and indicates what is probably necessary and what is probably necessary to conduct the study, and explain how the findings will present this information. So it is within this that we are also framing, a framework for reporting of your results is also established. Remember, everything that you are writing henceforth, it's linked to the problem that you are researching, is broadly speaking to the topic that you are studying, that is under study. Right. So for qualitative study, the research problem or guiding research question must be posed. So you have to you must have a research problem, or it's also called a guiding research question, which is the central question that you are you are asking, right? But if it's a quantitative study, then the hypothesis must be stated. You state the hypothesis. So what is it? What the nature of the relationship that you are expecting, the variables to have, so you have to hypothesize. Usually the hypothesis it's actually linked to literature or to theory, right? So you if theory says that there's a positive relationship between two variables, then that's where you frame your hypothesis from. What is it that you are expecting? What are you expecting to get? Are you expecting the relationship to be positive? So this is what tends to be tested. That after you have done your study, you have analyzed, done your analysis, then you have to test, go on the process of testing the hypothesis to prove it wrong or right. Right. So this is where the theory is proven wrong or right. Why? Because the hypothesis is framed within the context of existing theories, right? If the theory says that there's a positive relationship between demand and between price and supply, for example, positive relationship between price and supply. The higher the price, the higher the quantity supplied, isn't it? The lower the price, then the higher the demand. So that is the negative relationship. So if theory says that, then if you want to test that, you can now test it through research. And after obtaining your results, you can see whether are the results speaking to that. Are they significant in terms of the supporting that when the price is higher, then quantity supplied is also higher. So you test that. You test the hypothesis, and you either accept the null hypothesis or accept the or reject the null hypothesis or accept the alternative hypothesis. So rejecting the null hypothesis means you're accepting the alternative hypothesis. So usually the null hypothesis, you say there's no relationship between the two. Then you frame the alternative hypothesis that there is a relationship that exists between the two, right? Okay, so the research question or hypothesis must make sense in the context of the presentation of the background and rationale to the problem, which is the motivation to the problem that you are looking at, or the rationale to the problem that you would have stated. Explain the problem, the extent of the problem, and possible solutions to that particular problem. But like I said, all this should be done in at most 2 paragraphs, right? Then you move on to a section where you have to, underpin your study in, or your proposed study in theory, right? So this is you are now establishing the theoretical foundation, of the study, or the theoretical perspective, the framework and foundation of the study that you are doing. So in here you are just simply, further expanding the research goals and demonstrating the knowledge of recent and prior authoritative literature, locally and internationally. Then proficiency and ability to give an adequate report of preliminary research. So you're just simply showing, it's a snapshot. So within that, when you're writing a proposal, you don't have to write the 10 pages of literature. No, it's a snapshot of showing that, okay, this is the important or central literature within your study that speaks to the research that you are doing, or that informs the research that you are doing, and also showing that you're demonstrating knowledge, that you know what is going on within the field, or with regard to the topic that you are studying. So the literature study should include definition of concepts, the theoretical foundation, the empirical results from other studies. It should also cover the main aspects or themes of the study. When you are now writing your full literature chapter, then mostly it actually builds on the literature that would have written there. So all the main aspects or themes of the study that they are doing, this is where they have to be sort of covered. Then when you are writing your full literature review chapter, then you build onto this. These are just some important tips when you are writing the theoretical foundation and literature review section. You have to establish the research intellectual context related to your topic. For example, theory, conceptual or theoretical frameworks. I think this also is a discussion, maybe possibly for another day, where we can talk about the differences between conceptual and theoretical framework. I've seen quite a number of students who show lack of understanding of what these two mean. When you talk about conceptual framework or a theoretical framework, and also theory, just a distinction of that. Then you should also trace the history of the development of your topic. So the background, starting with the background, then you come to the present thinking. That's why I say, usually myself, I follow sort of a top-down pyramid approach, or a funnel approach, where you start broadly, then you become more specific. So I always also like to take this sort of a historical development kind of when I'm developing that particular topic. So I go back in history and just try to see the evolution of maybe a particular concept or a line of thinking. Then I bring it to the present. So that also necessitates that issue of the sort of that, whether your sources are they recent or not. We also look at them contextually. Right? If it's a historical item that you are sort of presenting, then of course the source should be old. Then if it's a current issue, then the source should be a new source. Or if we are presenting statistics, let's say we are talking about economic growth. If we are talking about maybe the economic growth of South Africa, we cannot reference the figures of maybe 1990. Whilst we are talking about the state of affairs in the current, right? So we need you also need current statistics, right? So that's why I say it's contextual. Then you must indicate the latest research or thinking and developments in your topic, current issues studied, and current practices as well. So that shows even if it's a historical concept, it also evolves, right? The thinking perceptions are also shaped over time, and they change over time. You can see with advancements in technology, there are things that we could not do before that we can do now. So that also sort of defines the orientations that research sometimes takes, and you can see that there is an evolution that takes place over time. Discuss conflicting arguments and detect gaps in present knowledge. So that is your value addition that I've alluded to earlier, that you must also add value. Apply your mind to the text. Don't just collect text. Don't just build a library, but apply your mind, add value. Look for arguments, conflicting arguments. Look for orientations that the literature is taking, look for divergences, look for areas of agreements, look for trends that the literature is taking. So then your discussions or your value addition is sort of surrounding those aspects, or sort of speaking to those aspects. Then check that the essential issues of your research problem are introduced through the analysis of the literature. So remember, you have a problem that you are researching on. And when you're writing literature, what is checked by the reviewer is the relevance of the literature to the topic. So remember, you have a topic that you are looking at. Don't just write anything that you find in literature, but it's you who have to sieve and think of the suitability of the themes that you are looking at is attached or is linked to the topic, and understand. So you have to give an overview of significant literature around the research topic, moving from general to specific, as I see it, and central to that, the literature must end with gap identification. If you don't identify the gap within literature, then also the reliability of that we can place on the gap that you would have stated in your introduction is sort of diminished, right? So you have to identify the gap, and the gap has to be, it's an exercise that is done in the literature review section, and also provide a theoretical basis of your study, the theoretical foundation or the grounding, the pillars on which your study is anchored on, right? From the literature review theory and literature review section, we move on to the research questions and objectives. So you have to explicitly state the research questions and also the objectives of the study. But when we are writing articles, usually one can stand in place of the other. Myself, if I specify a research question or if I pose a question, then I don't necessarily put the objectives as well, because they just feed into each other. The research question, if you write it in another manner, then it will also become a research objective. So you just draw one from the other. So if my perception is that if one exists, then you are able to frame the other from that one. So the research questions, that's the main or overarching question of your research that you seek to answer. So I normally split this into two: the secondary and the primary and the secondary research question. Then also the same applies to the objectives, where I have the primary and secondary objectives. But in some cases, they say the purpose of the study, then which becomes the primary objectives. Then they also have state objectives as well. Okay, but myself, I just make use of primary and secondary. So when you say the primary or the overarching or the main question, this is the question that is central to your study, that you really seek to answer, which is linked to the topic that you are studying. So this is framed directly from the topic. But in asking that question, you end up asking other questions as well. So that will become the secondary questions. So usually it's optional how many questions or subsequent questions a study can have, or you can choose, depending on the study that you are doing. So there's no really to say this is the number of questions that you must ask when you are doing honors. This is the number of questions for masters. This is for PhD. So quantitative studies can use hypotheses in alternative to research questions. So you can state the hypothesis in alternative. But like I said, hypotheses, you build them from theory. Then you can also divide them. I've already mentioned that into primary or the overall question and secondary questions. Then the research objectives, you just see them as stepping stones to achieve your aim or the purpose of the study. So you have the primary, which ensure that where you should ensure that the primary objective links to the title of the start or to the topic that is under start. Then we have the theoretical objectives, which is objectives that you want to achieve via literature review process. Remember, when you do the literature review, it's also an objective that you should be added in your start. Then the empirical objectives, which are objectives that you want to achieve via the data or statistical review process. So all these. So at the end, you have the main objective, then you have other secondary objectives, which are the theoretical objectives and the empirical objectives. Theoretical, which are the ones that you want to achieve through the exercise of reviewing existing literature, right? Then we move on to the research design, so which is the research design and methodology. So within this, you must ensure that the research methodology is coherent and consistent with the research paradigm within which the research is grounded. So you have to you cannot say that you are doing qualitative research, then you talk of paradigms that speaks to quantitative research. So the research methodology should provide a clear structure of the research and the methods that will be used in the start for you to be able to answer those questions that we are posing or to achieve the objectives of the start. So the research approach, design, and method should establish the kind of research required to fulfill the objective of the start. The conceptual approach or strategy to the research that will address the research question or hypothesis optimally. So here's an example. You can have non-empirical, which are theoretical, philosophical, conceptual analysis, content analysis, document analysis, or empirical methods, which are sort of survey-based methods, right? So the research design has to be clear. The research approach, design, and methods that you are following, it has to be very, very clear. I think previously I presented on quantitative data collection tools and also on qualitative data collection tools, which are some of the facets that we have to look at when you are now talking about the research approach, design, and method. And those materials are also there. The resources for that, they are there on our Moodle, communities. Still within the research design and methodology, the research approach and design method must establish the research design that will answer the research question or validate or falsify the hypothesis the best. And so you have to look at, given maybe if it's a quantitative, you have to look at characteristics of the data. That's where you look at those descriptive statistics of the variables and so on, for you to be able to see the appropriateness of the method that you are using in terms of the data that you analyzing the data that you want to analyze. Is it appropriate? Does it conform to the assumption of that particular method before you move on? Otherwise, the results that you get in statistical terms, they are termed as spurious results, so which means they are nonsensical, right? You did not follow the right procedures for you to be able to arrive at the findings that you found and the conclusions that you made. So we cannot rely on that, right? So they call it nonsensical results. It's as hard as it sounds. That is the term that they use for that, the spurious results. Then you describe the context of the qualitative research design or the quantitative research design. Is the study mainly qualitative, quantitative, or a combination of both? So which makes it a mixed method approach. If a qualitative design, which qualitative method is applied? Are you applying a case study? Is it grounded theory? Is it a phenomenological study? Is it an ethnograph? And so on. So you must be acquainted with these terms, with these sort of designs that I'm talking about. It's a process of reading, like I said. So you must read, see which the research design best suits the questions, answering the questions that you you are posing or achieving the objectives that you want to achieve, right? And within that particular broader design, you also have to look at these other sort of methods that you have to apply, in terms of if it's a qualitative design, like for example case study, grounded theory, and so on. Then if the design is a quantitative one, you must look at which quantitative method is applied, whether are you following an experimental method or a quasi-experimental method. Is it a cross-sectional approach? Is it a longitudinal approach, and so on. Where applicable, adequate consideration must be given to validity and reliability issues. When we talk of experimental methods, we are referring to research designs in which the researcher explicitly and intentionally induces exogenous variation in the intervention assignment to facilitate causal inference. So you have a sort of a dependent and an exogenous variable, but then you have to sort of induce some exogenous variation for you to see the implication of that on the independent on the dependent variable. So we see that experimental methods, they typically include directly randomized variation of programs or interventions, including what is called random assignment. All right. Then the quasi-experimental one, just like a true experiment, this is a design that aims to establish a cause and effect relationship between an independent and dependent variable. So we normally use that for those for us in social sciences. I'm from economics, by the way. So we also use quasi experimental research design. So the difference with the true experiment is that the quasi experiment does not rely on random assignment. Instead, we assign subjects to groups based on a random criteria. But we have to if we are looking, assign them to the control group or the treatment group. Then the data collection techniques or methods. This is what I presented to last week. I think I presented on both quantitative and qualitative data collection techniques last week and the week before. The week before on 12, we looked at the quantitative data collection techniques, and last week, Friday, we looked at qualitative data collection tools. So here, the methodological approach will determine the data collection technique that you are going to use, right? If it's a qualitative, then there are tools that are used for qualitative research design. Then if it's quantitative, there's also tools that are used for quantitative research design. So the primary sources, for example, interviews, participatory action research, field research, focus groups, these are used for qualitative research design. You look at issues like recruitment of participants, process of obtaining informed consent, data collection, in terms of framework, sample size, if it's questionnaires, all those data collection tools. So which one really is appropriate? That is the question you must ask yourself. It's appropriate to really be the best in answering the questions that you are posing, or in achieving the objectives that you want to achieve. So we also have secondary data sources, which are legislations, journals, internet sources, documentary sources, books, official documents, conference papers, newspapers, and that data that you can access on other databases or data or other data repositories, right? So you can which you can go and download, like maybe for example, economic growth data. You can go on States SA and download that. That becomes secondary data. But remember, at one point it was primary data because it has to be collected. Then after the collection, then it becomes secondary data, which is stored in some database or some repository, data repository. Then usually for this, you must be cognizant of data sources, econometric methods that you use to analyze that data, like SPSS, for example, Stata, eViews, then also the model that you want to specify. You must have a model, that you are specifying. So where you do the analysis, then you fit that model, with sort of actual with sort of the what you think the expected relationship would be. Then you fit the coefficient of that model, so which gives be useful in giving an estimation of what that which you are looking at, or the to quantify, for you to be able to quantify the dependent variable in terms of the explanatory the varying explanatory variables. Okay, then after the research design and methodology, you can look at ethical considerations, which are issues such as gaining permission to conduct the study at a particular organization, ensuring that participation is voluntary and anonymous, protecting the confidentiality of the information provided by the respondents. There are quite a lot of ethical issues or concerns that one should really sort of have to address. When you are writing your proposal, and the universities have ethical committees that will sit and go through your ethical application. We'll look at that later also when we talk of the submission the procedures that you have to sort of fulfill in order for you to be given permission to undertake that particular study, especially if it involves humans and animals, as well as other aspects of the environment and nature. You must identify any potential or existing ethical constraints and propose solution or strategies to that. If there are ethical concerns that you deem that maybe this might sort of arise during the course of the study. So you don't have to lie that there's no harm, yet you perceive that there will be, or you sort of look forward that there will be harm when you are now undertaking the study. So ethical constraints should be identified in terms of quality of the research ethics, integrity, protection of data, and the respondents as well. Then the contribution, very important, or research contribution, very important for those, especially who are undertaking PhD studies. But also important even when they are writing journal articles. It's important for you to demonstrate that what you are writing is something that is new. So it's very, very important for you to demonstrate that what you are writing is something that is new. The novelty or the originality of your work is something that is sort of central to the whether you start your paper is accepted or not. So for PhD, this is mandatory. You have to explain the unique contribution of the study. So for PhD, it's a mandatory section. For those who are doing masters, it's always good if you can be explicitly state what your contribution also that you are making is. You have to reiterate what you are hoping to demonstrate. State how your research could contribute to debates in your particular subject area, perhaps filling a gaps in existing works or in existing literature. Right. So so this should be usually a gap in theory. Sometimes you can also, the significance can be in sort of proposing solutions. It could be frameworks of how a particular problem can be addressed or can be sort of resolved. So that also forms part of contribution, but sometimes also differ. with the from one institution to another in terms of what they deem to be acceptable contribution in terms of a PhD study. Then you must also have a research plan, which might be asked to present your timeline for completing the dissertation or the thesis or the research that you are doing. So you have to provide an outline of the schedule and anticipated progress towards completing the dissertation or thesis. The timeline can be presented using different formats, such as in bullet point. You can use a table. You can also use a Gantt chart that you can do in Excel or using other softwares that are used to sort of produce a Gantt chart. Then the research plan must be realistic. It should demonstrate awareness of the various elements of the study, such as literature research, empirical work, writing, and so on, the whole research process. You don't have to set goals that are unrealistic, timelines that are also unrealistic. So you have to be aware of all the facets that relates to the study that you are doing. Okay, then the research outline or chapter classification, you must outline how the structure of your chapters and provide a summary of what you envision to be the contents of the chapters. You can do it maybe just a very small paragraph, for dedicated maybe for what you are going to do in each chapter. Instead of just saying chapter 1, introduction, chapter 2, you can write a little bit, for it to be a bit descriptive. Then the provisional table of contents for your research is usually, this is the suggested chapter layout. Chapter 1, introduction and background to the study. Then you say maybe in this chapter, this is what we'd have done. Chapter 2, literature review. So in this chapter, this is what it will be dedicated to the review of literature. I will look at literature relating to these elements. Then you just sort of step them. Those themes that you are going to be looking at when you are reviewing literature. Then chapter 3, research design and methodology. Chapter 4, results and findings. Then chapter 5, the conclusions and recommendations. So these are just the generic chapter layout or chapter outline, but you can have more than this number of chapters stated, especially in the literature review. You can have more than maybe two, more than one chapter there. So it depends on the brevet of the study that you are doing. So you might see others can include a application literature, theoretical literature, a separate section. Others can have a theoretical framework. Then they can also have a literature review section which has focus on the empirical literature. So you can decide to do that. Even in terms of results as well, you can have 2 chapters. You can even have 3 chapters. Let's say maybe this was a mixed method study. You can have a chapter dedicated to quantitative results, another one to qualitative results. Then you can also have the discussions being a chapter on its own, discussion chapter. So you can also decide within the results and findings section chapter as well. How many chapters are you going to have? Then the conclusions and recommendations also become 1 chapter. Sometimes if there's a framework that you are developing, then it can be another chapter where you post that framework and then conclude. So this is it's up to you to think of how your study will be structured, but this is sort of a generic approach. Then the referencing and technical requirements, referencing, why is it important that we must reference? You know that for every in-text citation that you make, there must be a corresponding reference entry in the reference list. The difference between bibliography and references, some they will call it a bibliography, but there's a difference between the two, where when you talk of the reference list, it only includes those sources that you have cited in the text, right? But the bibliography, it also it includes those sources that you have cited in the text, including other sources that you have referred to but did not cite in the text, including even bibliographical notes. So if you go in a look at articles that have a reference list and compare them to those that only have a bibliography, you will see the difference of what I'm talking about. The bibliography have other sources that do not even exist in the text, but that the author referred to, and also notes, bibliographical notes. You can write some notes there, right? Then you also remember, why do we reference? Avoiding plagiarism, also as providing evidence that what our claims or our ideas are supported by other authors. So remember, other authors can support, or they can also be on the other side as well. So it's either they can be supportive of what you are doing, or they can be assume a negative side as well. So both. But at the end, that is evidence that you are engaging with other scholars within the field, or as pertaining to the topic under study. Then you have to also know the requirements in terms of how the sources should be referenced, where a referencing guide, you have to follow the referencing style and referencing guide. For the CBE, it's we use the UJ Harvard referencing guide, which is also the same referencing style that we also use, the UJ Harvard. So you have to follow that. But in some cases, maybe it can be department specific, that maybe they say we use APA. You just have to conform to the referencing style that you would have been that would have been indicated that you must use or you must apply. In terms of technical requirements, numbering, usually 1 and not 1 with a full stop, and 1.1 and not 1.1 with a full stop. So it's just a requirement. Layout, you use Arial. Usually, if it's Arial, then the font size should be 11. Spacing 1.5. That is the line spacing, and paragraph spacing of 12 points. The generic, the sort of the default one is 8 points. The paragraph spacing is 8 points on Microsoft Office. But you have to remember these technical requirements. Before you start writing, you have to just sort of maybe structure your template according to these requirements. If you are using the font for Times New Roman, which are used oftenly, the font size should be 12, same line spacing 1.5, and paragraph spacing of 12 points, right? Then the heading levels, level heading level 1 or level heading 1, that must be bold. Usually I use 14 points because I want it to differ from the other. So I use 14 points. This is the title, the chapter heading, right? This is chapter heading. I use 14 points. It must be capitalized. That's the chapter heading. Then the subheadings, bold. Subheading must be small letter, but bold. I also use the 14 points, lowercase. This is the heading in the text. Why I use 14 points is because I don't want it to be the same as the text. So if the text is 12 points, then you have to go maybe 2 points, 2 notch above that. Okay, but this is also prescribed in the templates that you get from faculty. But this is just a generic one in case your department does not offer that. Then the subheadings, level heading 3, that is 1.1.1. That should just be small letter, not bold. 14 points, lowercase. This is the headings that are in the text. Then we have a subheading 1.1.1, which becomes small letter, italics, but not bold. 14 points, lowercase. These are so headings as well in the text. So I try as much as possible to go up to these 4 levels. If you exceed these levels, now 1.1.1.1 maybe 5 times or 6 times, then that becomes it's a heavily dissected sort of a chapter sort of, or even if it's a section. Right? We shouldn't have a lot of sections, but that which can be combined, you have to just combine it so that you don't end up with sections that are consisting of 3 lines, 4 lines, or just one paragraph. Then that you deem it to constitute a section. So a section consists of multiple paragraphs. A chapter consists of multiple sections, right? So don't have a chapter of one paragraph of one section. Don't have a section of just one paragraph. It's a collection of multiple paragraphs, 2 or more. But sections should not be short, very short sections. So rather use other points of presenting your information. It can be bullet points, for instance. Then also in terms of technical requirements, when listing, please use bullet form and do not number paragraphs only. You number the headings. Okay, so the paragraphs should not be numbered. So the section should be numbered. So I always avoid to use numbers again within the text as well, because remember our sections and our chapters are numbered. We use the Roman. When I'm now maybe within the text, let's say I want to use numbers, I use Roman numerals, right? I use the Roman numerals, so I do not number it as 1, 2, 3. Why? Because I already numbered my section as 1, 1.1. The chapters are also numbered in that the type of numbering form. So I use Roman numerals if I need to number inside text. But all tables and figures should be numbered, and you must give a caption heading. Then remember to give credit to the original authors from which the table or figure was adapted. If you take a table from somewhere, or if you adapt it, then you're actually supposed to seek for permission if you take tables and figures from works of other people. And also, don't just put a table without referring to it in the text, as well as the figures as well. You don't put a figure without referring to it within the text. Tables and figures, they should be self-explanatory. As weird as it sounds, you do not have to replicate what you have said on the table. If in the table you say, you put a table, then you say in column 1 there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Then you go in the text and say, as you can see in column 1, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Then why are you then presenting it in form of a table if you could say it in words? So what you would have written, don't just force to write to put a table so that you can sort of cover in terms of space that you are allowed, that you are maybe are required to have. Let's say maybe you are required to have 10 pages because you want to fill those 10 pages. Then you end up putting diagrams and figures where they are not appropriate. So if you can say it in text, then say it in text. Don't replicate it on a table. Or if you have put it on a table, then don't repeat saying what is stated on the table. But you have to mention the most important things on the table when making reference to the table. But otherwise, it should be self-explanatory with its own sort of notes to abbreviations and so on, so that I don't have to go to the text for me to get sense of what the table is about or what the figure is about. So that's the self-explanatory part that I'm talking about. Then also references in the text. So when, for example, we follow the author date system, Monyera 2018, Monyera et al. 2018, for example. So this can be also put when it's in text at the end, where you put in bracket Monyera, comma, space 2018, close bracket. So that depends on the positioning of the citation, as well as the way that you are referring to it according to, then you say Monyera 2018 like how it's written there. But let's say you write what Monyera, an idea that you have maybe got from Monyera, then you write about it. Then at the end, you just give credit to Monyera. Then that's where you use bracket Monyera, then comma 2018, then close bracket. Then the bibliographical particulars arranged in alphabetical order. Then there's no numbering and no categories as well. You don't categorize to say books, journals, but this you have to follow the referencing style that Harvard, Northwestern, UJ, Harvard in this case. Right, so it's sort of a manipulated form of the original Harvard referencing style, but manipulated or adapted to for UJ to be UJ specific. Then you just have to follow the referencing guide. I always say that to those who have consulted with me before, that if you fail to reference properly, I see it as just ignorance. You must check your proposal for the following. Have you shown that your research idea is ethical, relevant, feasible within the time frame, including the resources that are available as well? Then have you identified a clear research gap to focus on, stated why your study is important, and selected a methodology that will enable you to gather the data that you need? Don't choose a method that you know that you are not going to be able to get the data, right? Or frame a study that you know that there's no, you cannot be able to sort of research on it, given these sort of other constraints in terms of resources and time as well, right? Then these are the submission procedures, which are also sort of generic. The departments as well, they might have their own sort of rules in terms of how do you submit, but this is just sort of a generic process that is followed. There is what is called a departmental submission, where there's an initial review that is done. So you submit your completed proposal to your department for an initial review, and the step often involves feedback from your supervisor and possibly a departmental review committee, right? So upon approval, so in some departments, there's an oral presentation of the proposal that is required during a departmental colloquium or before written submission, right? So you can go and present, then you at the end, you sort of defending what you would have been writing. Then from there, from that colloquium, you also get insights into how you can improve your proposal, and then before you submit it finally. Then in terms of documentation, so after departmental approval, you submit the signed proposal to the faculty higher degree committee, where you have to ensure that all required documents, including any necessary ethics approvals, are also included. So if your study involves dealing with humans, animals, and so on, even that which does not involve that, you still have to get an ethical clearance. So that if you have already got the ethical clearance, then you can submit that to the higher degree committee for approval. So you have to be mindful of submission deadlines to avoid delays in your research timelines. So there's specified time frames in which you should have submitted your proposals that are usually set. But this is also something that within the faculty, within your department, you have to sort of inquire so that you are really sure of the process that are supposed to be followed. Like I said, that they are usually departmental specific as well, but this is the sort of a generic procedure that is followed. Then there's, in terms of ethics approval, if it's applicable, but like I said, both where you use secondary data or primary data, you still need to seek approval. Though for secondary data, you might see that maybe the ethics form that you use it will be sort of very minimal or limited. You don't have to fill a lot of things, but you just have to indicate that the study does not involve the sort of interaction with human beings, with animals, and those other kind of ethical concerns that that should be that you should be cognizant of. Then the submission of that, you submit the completed ethics application forms along with your research proposal and any required appendices to the designated ethics committee. Or that is when this also has to be submitted to the higher degree committee, which is the one where all this your proposal end there. Then you start with the writing process of your research if your proposal has been approved. This is just my concluding remarks. Writing is a process, not an event. Follow prescribed writing conventions. There are rules that governs the way that we write, especially in academic context. We don't write like journalists, but we write in a manner that is formal, where we get straight to the point. We don't beat about the bush. We do not protect our sources, but we review the sources. So the academic writing is formal, it's evidence-based. It's a process, it's a gradual process, it's slow, but sure is the winner in most cases. A well-conceptualized research proposal, it guarantees the success of your research. Self-academic discipline is very important. In most cases, I say you do not fail, but instead you do not finish. Because for you to fail, it's when you have finished something and you have submitted it to be evaluated. Then it's either what you would have submitted. If it's a PhD, it's rejected, it's accepted, it's rejected with minor corrections, it's rejected with major corrections. But it would have been assessed for you to be able to fail. But if you do not finish, then you do not submit. Then, of course, there's no assessment that would have taken place for us to determine whether you have failed or not. Then always a good practice in academic research to practice good academic ethical conduct. What you do, it will follow you. So if you do not want to be known as the plagiarizer, you do not want to be known as one who do not apply or follow good ethical standards and so forth. Then plagiarism is an academic fraud and a criminal offense in academic circles. So we must always reference, when we do within the literature review section, we have to reference both in text and you have the in-text citations be recorded in the corresponding reference entries. Then follow the prescribed proposal formats and submission procedures that linked or associated with the department that you are currently registered, that you are under or that you aspire to be registered under. Right, there are just some sources that I used, in when I was sort of compiling this presentation. Then I hand over back to you, Lawrence, so that you can lead us into the open discussion or the question and answer session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gabriel, for the very insightful presentation on the College of Business and Economics proposal writing and submission procedures. Really appreciate your insights on that, and I'm sure all the participants have taken a point or two on the proposal writing and submission procedures. And as you said in the beginning, that you have sort of like titled this workshop as like tips and guidelines on how to write a proposal writing and submission procedure. So in that regard, I would like to open the floor for questions to the participants. If you'd like to contribute or you'd like to pose a question, please feel free. I have enabled everybody's mic. So if you would like to ask a question or make a comment, please go ahead and you can contribute. And also you can type your question in the chat box. Thank you so much. And also please note that I have posted the feedback survey in the chat session, in the chat box. So if you please kindly fill it in to ensure that you also get a certificate of attendance for this particular workshop. Thank you. I see there is a question being typed in the chat box. We'll just wait and I will be able to present it to you, Dr. Gabriel. So it's just thank you so much for the insightful presentation. Thank you so much, the Prince. There is a hand raised by Precious. Hi, Precious. Please enable your mic. I've enabled your mic. You can unmute and speak.
All right, good morning. Good morning. Thank you, Doc Monier, for the presentation.
Yes, thank you.
I have a question. Maybe I just need your clarity on the introduction or the background of the study. So I'm currently doing my PhD, and I needed clarity on the funnel approach that you mentioned when you're talking about the current state of issues regarding my topic. At what point do I distinguish or do I include my case? In my case, I'm using Zimbabwe. Do I include the current state of affairs in Zimbabwe? Do I include it in the background of the study, or I should just not include it and then put it on the problem statement?
Okay, no, thank you. Thank you for the question, Precious. Let me just say that remember everything that we write within the proposal or within the thesis itself, or the papers that you are going to write, if it's an article-based, the PhD that you are doing, everything speaks to the topic that is under study. It's like you're saying that your case is Zimbabwe, depending on the topic that you are studying. What I was putting forward was that myself, I usually follow sort of a historical account or an approach, but to the topic that I'm studying. I'm studying. What is it that you are studying about on Zimbabwe?
Looking at events tourism, the challenges, enablers,
Okay.
looking at resilient-based pathways.
Yes. So when I say you can maybe start from, okay, of course we will need to hear the context, of the state of affairs or what has been happening within that particular sector in Zimbabwe. It must be a lot to say. But remember, when you are giving this background, it doesn't mean that now it will be sections and sections of background. Remember, we are just giving us sort of an account so that we know what is it that has been happening. Then you just bring us from the past to the present, right? But everything speaks to the topic that you are studying, or the questions that you want to answer. So the background must be framed. The background is giving context to the problem. Okay, it's giving context to the topic so that we know what has been happening before you now state to us that this is what I want to do. Okay. I don't know if it's clear on your side, or you have a follow-up question on that.
It's clear, Doc. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Is there any more questions, Lawrence? I don't know if there's no any further questions. Then we can maybe move into the phase of closing.
And there isn't any further questions. I don't know if there's another question from the other participant. In that case, there isn't any questions at this moment. And thank you so much, Precious, for your contribution. And thank you so much for Dr. Gabriel for answering that question extensively. And we really, really appreciate it so much. In that case, if there isn't any further questions from the participants, I would like to once again thank you so much, Dr. Gabriel Moniera, for the very insightful presentation on proposal writing tips and guidelines, as you said in the beginning. And we really appreciate your insight. And thank you so much, Precious. And thank you so much to all the participants for taking the time to join. We really appreciate you, and hopefully you have a great day further. Thank you so much, and have a good day. In that regard, I will be now closing the session. Dr. Gabriel?
No, thank you. Thank you so much, Lawrence. And also thanks to the participants, for continuing to support us. I also wish you a great day further.
Okay. Thank you so much. In that regard, I will now be closing the session. Thank you.